The lights above Studio 67 buzzed with their usual electric hum, filling the air with a familiar backdrop of white noise. For Kelly Ripa, this was home. For more than 2 decades, that studio had been her second home. She knew every corner, the way the chair squeaked, the faint scent of fresh coffee drifting from the backstage kitchen, and the low hum of producers communicating through headsets. It was the rhythm of a place she loved deeply, but today something felt different. When Kelly arrived, the usual chatter among the crew was unusually quiet. Mark Consuelos, her husband and co-host, was already in his seat, but something in his eyes caught her attention immediately. There was exhaustion in his gaze, yes, but it went deeper than that. Something felt final, like quiet resignation. "I'm fine," he said softly, but it didn't sound convincing. "Let's just get through the show." Kelly felt a pressure in her chest, but she forced a smile, the one she had perfected over 23 years on live television. In this world, you mask your emotions until the cameras stop rolling. Something's not right. 5 minutes later, the countdown began. Going live in 3, 2, 1. The theme music blared, the audience applauded, and Kelly slipped into her seat beside Mark, ready to deliver the cheerful energy the world expected of her. "Good morning, everybody," she chimed, her trademark brightness in full force. "Good morning," Mark added, his voice far from bright. Kelly glanced at him, noticing how stiff his posture was, how his hands trembled slightly. The audience, both in the studio and watching at home, wouldn't catch it, not yet, but she felt it immediately. You don't spend 28 years with someone without learning to read their silence. As they moved through the first story, Kelly could sense Mark's distraction. Twice he fumbled his lines, something he rarely did. His mind wasn't on the show, it was somewhere else entirely. During a commercial break, Kelly leaned over and touched his arm. "Talk to me," she whispered. "You're scaring me." He opened his mouth to respond but closed it again, the words clearly trapped inside. The stage manager's voice called out, "Back in 10 seconds," and just like that he was out of time. The moment he couldn't hide anymore. When the cameras returned, Kelly was still trying to regain her composure. She started reading the cue card about an upcoming spring fashion segment, but halfway through the sentence, Mark reached out and gently took the card from her hand. Kelly's breath caught. The audience fell into silence, sensing something had shifted. "Kelly," Mark began, his voice tight, "I didn't want it to happen this way, but I can't keep pretending everything is normal. It's not fair to you, to the crew, or to the viewers." Kelly froze. He was going off script. "Today will be my last day on live TV," Mark continued, his words hanging heavily in the air. A gasp swept through the studio. Even the camera operator faltered for a split second. Kelly blinked, unable to process what she was hearing. "I'm quitting the show," Mark said plainly. "I've made the decision and it's final." The truth comes out. Kelly's world seemed to stop. The studio, which had always been full of energy and movement, now felt impossibly silent. She stared at Mark, her partner, her husband, her co-host, and in that moment the bright, polished world of morning television cracked open. A tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, her voice trembling, "Mark, we talked last night. You didn't say anything about quitting." "I didn't want to upset you," Mark admitted, his voice breaking. "But I can't keep this inside anymore. I'm burned out. I'm exhausted. My dad's health is getting worse, and I can't be here every morning while everything else falls apart." Kelly felt a rush of emotions, pain, empathy, and shock wash over her. She knew Mark's father hadn't been well, but she didn't know it had reached this point. To leave like this, on air, in front of millions, "That's the part I regret," Mark said quietly. "But if I waited, I would have backed out again, and then again. I needed to do it now." A quiet goodbye. The cameras were still rolling, millions were watching, and yet for the first time the show didn't matter. Only the two of them did. Kelly took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She reached for Mark's hand and held it tightly. "We need to say goodbye properly," she whispered. "The audience deserves that, and so do you." Mark nodded, swallowing hard. He turned toward the camera and straightened his posture. Thank you. This show has been a warm, chaotic, beautiful part of my life. But sometimes life sends you a message you can't ignore, and mine is telling me to go home, to be with the people who need me most. Kelly squeezed his hand, tears shining in her eyes. Live is more than a talk show, she said, her voice cracking but steady. It's a family, and even when one of us leaves, the family stays. The audience erupted into applause, their understanding gentle and emotional. Mark looked at Kelly one last time. I love you, Kel. I love you too, she whispered. The moment that lasted. The stage manager signaled they were going to commercial, but Kelly shook her head. No, she said softly. Leave the cameras. Mark looked at her confused, but she inhaled deeply. I want people to see this, because it's real, and because our viewers have been with us through everything. Laughter, chaos, awkward moments, and now this. He nodded slowly, moved by her strength. Kelly intertwined her fingers with his and leaned her head on his shoulder. For a long, quiet moment, neither of them said a word. The studio was silent, except for the soft hum of the lights above them. In that silence, a chapter ended, not with scripted lines, not with rehearsed applause, but with raw truth. The aftermath. When the show finally cut to commercial, Kelly remained exactly where she was, holding on to the man she loved, even as he said goodbye to the world they had built together. And in that moment, America realized something profound. Not all shocking moments or scandals are fueled by drama. Sometimes they're heart-wrenching, sometimes they're the truth breaking through, and sometimes they're just two people doing their best to navigate life. A new beginning. The minutes following the commercial break were unlike anything the crew had ever witnessed. Production assistants stood frozen, unsure whether to approach or give the couple space. The stage manager wiped tears from her eyes, pretending it was just dust in the air. The audience, still seated quietly, seemed to understand they were witnessing a moment that transcended entertainment. Kelly finally sat up, straightening her shoulders despite the tears still clinging to her lashes. We still have a show to finish, she whispered, her voice shaking. Mark nodded, but there was a softness in his expression. He was relieved of a burden he had carried too long. The heart of the show. When the cameras returned, Kelly addressed the viewers with a steadiness that amazed even herself. Life doesn't always follow a script, she said. But love, real love, means supporting someone even when it breaks your heart. Mark looked at her with gratitude, his eyes moist. This isn't goodbye for us, he added gently. It's just a new chapter, one we'll face together, just off camera. Kelly reached for his hand again, not for the show, not for the audience, but for herself. In that vulnerable moment, viewers across the world felt it. This wasn't the end. It was an evolution, a raw reminder that behind the polished smiles and the perfect lighting, they were just two people, navigating life together.